Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to the TeamIslas podcast, episode 11. My name is Doug Bush, and today, as always, I'm joined by
Patricia Islas
and
Zach Shear.
And this is the podcast for anyone looking to better themselves in percussion education. Rule 3 of 24, transitions are the most difficult thing in music. So this is part of our 24 rule series that comes from a series of I call them rules, but as I explain in the book, kind of loose guideline in my book, Master Hands, that is a method book for snare drumming, where I tried to collect some of the most, what I would consider maybe profound lessons I've learned over the years as a teacher with students universally. And these first three, so step 1 is timing, step 2 is sound, and then transitions are the most difficult thing in music, where immediately I knew exactly that these were the 3 and these were the order and these were the top 3, because after teaching for, over half my life.
Many years.
Yeah, many years. For many programs at many levels, I saw that I noticed my beginners, my 6th graders, the things where they would make a mistake in lesson is the exact same place my seniors who were about to go to Berkeley on scholarship would make a mistake. And I think it stems from we're training the students and we ourselves as musicians to listen to the sound we are creating as we're playing. And not only are we listening to it, we're actively listening, we're also analyzing it simultaneously. Is it too fast? Is it too slow, too loud, too soft? Did I hit the right part of the bar? So on and so forth. And sometimes if I'm stringing together a phrase that's maybe a little too long that I'm not ready for, or I'm going a tempo that's a little too fast, I play something, and even though my hands have moved to the next thing, my mind is still on the first thing. And then that results in a wrong note or a break or any other type of mistake. And so it was in that transition from one chord to another, or one page to another, or one rehearsal marking to another, that the mistake occurred, right? And this is a mantra we get with the students very early to help teach them to understand there's been a lot of neurological science behind the fact that our brain handles taking small strings of information and putting them together much better than it does larger, right? So we take a small chunk of music with the student. We teach them this is the proper way to start. We do it slowly. Almost every piece of music we teach our students, we actually start at the end, not the beginning. We start with the last measure of the piece, and then the second to last, and we are building the transitions that way. That's maybe a deeper topic for another episode, but the TLDRs, it's easier to go somewhere when you already know where you're going, right? But we just ingrain all these kind of positive habits. And here's another practical one that I would highly recommend to you that I guarantee you yourself have done, and you have seen done by fellow band directors and educators. We're rehearsing a piece of music. We're going, top to A. Okay, great. We got it. Sounds beautiful. Okay, now we're going to go A to B. Sounds great. Beautiful. Okay, well, let's put it together. Well, guess what we haven't practiced, folks? We haven't practiced the transition from A to B. Right? We have not connected the two. And that rehearsal marking is there for a reason. It's because these are two different parts of the music. Guess what happens the first time the band tries to do this, or the drumline tries to do this, or the student tries to do this? Guess where they make a mistake? The literal place that we haven't practiced, which is also arguably where the biggest transition is going to occur. So my students, by the time they get to the high school, they know when we are putting these things together, I am going to play the last measure of one rehearsal marking leading into the first measure of the second rehearsal. So, like the last measure of A into the first measure of B, correct? Once I can do that comfortably, I'll back up a measure and move forward a measure. So I'm doing 2 before B and 2 after B, right? Does that make sense? And I would add on and expand and grow out from there. Again, we're talking about efficiency here. We only have so much time, and we want to be able to do this at a high level, and we want the kids to have the opportunity not only to play the music to the best of their ability, but for them to feel comfortable doing it to the best of their ability so they can make the most of it, and so they have the opportunity to play more music. And this really manifests for me personally at Coppell when we have our drumline camp. I have essentially 1 week. I have 1 week to teach the snare line all the basics and fundamentals and approach, but then also collectively as staff to teach the entire drumline an entire drumline show. Like, we really need to end that week being able to play the whole show. And we need to be able to end the week playing whatever we have of the marching band show, which from the Wind Arranger is usually part 1 or part 1 and part 2. That is a ton of stuff to get done in a single week, right? And so if we have a logical, systematic, thoughtful way of practicing, and the students already know how to handle these transitions and think of these transitions before we have even played the first exercise, all those micro, a couple seconds here, a couple seconds here, makes a minute here, a minute there, the minutes add up. And before you know it, by the end of the week, we've saved an hour, 2, 3 hours of rehearsal just by being so much more efficient in how we decided to approach things.
Mm-hmm. I would add to that something that an experience I have witnessed over and over again, without the aid of any medical device. I have firsthand seen blood pressure rise from band directors in marching band rehearsals when doing full runs of the show for the first time, or full runs of part 1 and part 2 together for the first time. And that transition between the two movements has not been ever touched.
Yep.
Right? There's an expectation from the people standing in the audience that it should go at least kind of like we just rehearsed, because it's the last thing we played was part 2,
of course.
Right?
Yeah.
But that never is the case if we have missed the fact that these two movements are at 2 different tempos, right? They have 2 different feels, sometimes different time signatures. Yep. And that there is a lot for a 14-year-old trombone player that's a lot on their shoulders to just manage without walking through the process, holding their hand through the process of
especially the trombone,
what they need to be thinking and what they need to be giving attention to. So you can save yourself a lot of time, obviously on an efficiency standpoint, but also many, many mistakes that you can avoid by giving necessary reps to transitional phrases.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mr. Bush, the rule says transitions are the most difficult thing in music. The late, great Christopher Dean would say that music is not hard, it's time consuming, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would ask myself this, but I would ask our listeners as well, if the most difficult thing is transitions, and we know that difficulty is time consuming in music, do your rehearsals reflect that? Mm-hmm. Do your rehearsals reflect that the transition should be time consuming in your rehearsal?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if not, then you're probably going to run into an error, which is what we've been talking about here. I think it's also important to consider, for the benefit of your students, for the efficiency of their individual practice time and for their individual success, what does this mean on an individual level? Mr. Bush, you did a great job of illustrating that you're talking to the kids about this as early as 6th grade, right?
Absolutely.
My mind immediately goes to some of my top students who are competing in the all-state band process. And what does it look like for them to really make sure they're going to nail that transition, because they get one chance. And for some of these kids, right?
That's intense.
Yes.
That's really intense.
And we know this type of student that really wants to make the all-state band, right? And they've been working on it for months, and it's so important to them. And they get one chance. Okay, how do I set that student up to make sure those transitions are amazing? Well, all the things you've been talking about apply on an individual level as well, right? I'm going to start at that transition. I'm going to go 1 measure back, 1 measure forward, et cetera, et cetera. I also think of this in the context of preparing them to play whatever cut is put in front of them. Because that's one of the things in these auditions, right? The cuts are coming out. What do you think the cuts are going to be? And I would tell my top students, who I know are spending a lot of hours doing this type of practice anyway, we're going to be ready for any potential cut.
Right.
Even the silly
even the
ones,
weird ones.
Right? So not exaggerating, you're going to practice starting and say you're going to do, 4-bar chunks maybe. You're going to practice playing 4-bar chunks in measure 1 and in measure 2 and in measure 3. And the list just goes on and on to the end of the piece until you're playing the last 4 bars. And it sounds silly, but it's no, I'm actually going to be prepared to start anywhere.
Yeah.
So there is no transition that even feels like a transition anymore to me.
Yeah, it's all comfortable.
Right. It's all comfortable. It's all comfortable. I would always tell them, imagine, and of course none of them have ever ironed, but I was if you've ever ironed, you got there's a wrinkle in something, you don't just go over it once. You're going to have to go over it over and over. I should have brought an ironing board to the band hall to illustrate this.
And you don't start on the wrinkle.
Right. No, you got to start back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, lost art. Okay. But kind of like timpani in the front ensemble. But anyway.
Is that the next podcast? How to iron?
Right. Sorry. Previous podcast. The other scenario I think about about as a teacher is, what does this look like in a beginner classroom? Okay. My sixth graders, they might not quite receive that same level of like, okay, start in measure 1, start in measure 2. Like we're maybe not doing that in sixth grade, but I know for me as a teacher, in order to illustrate this to them and in order to make sure that whatever performance they have coming up, we're going to be successful, I'm going to have times in class where the thing we're working on is the transition. It's not it's so hard to sometimes go, okay, we're not working on the diddles. We're not working on anything that's a skill like class. What we are doing right now is working on, I think of like the first time they play a line of music that's 2 lines long, you know, and they're like, whoa, it doesn't stop. It goes down and to the left. Oh my gosh, you know? So we're going to practice that transition from the last measure of line 1 to the second measure of line 2. And the transition is the skill we're working on right now.
Right.
That's so important to start to illustrate to that to them even in sixth grade.
Absolutely. And so many of these things that we do aren't necessarily black and white. It's a combination of a lot of factors working together, right? And so a tool we've developed over the years that I think has been really successful, and I know anyone that's come out and worked with us for an extended time has also then adopted it or used it really, is something called the mental run, which helps with a myriad of things, but one of those things being the transition. And so a good example of this, we'll get into this a little deeper in a future podcast where we talk about, you know, maybe drumline rehearsal or something, but I'll use that as a guide. Let's say it's the first time the battery is going to get together and play a chunk of the drumline music, you know, the band show, whatever. When we get together, first thing we do is a mental run, meaning like the Met comes on, the section leader taps it off, and then no one touches an instrument. Maybe they're drumming in the air. Maybe they're using their hands lightly on the drums or something like that. But there's very little to almost no sound happening. And everybody is mentally playing the part and hearing it at the exact level and quality they would like to play, right? The only exception to that is sometimes Mr. Bush, I am playing it, right? Because you can't make a good sound if you don't know what that sound is. And so I'm playing it in a manner that I want the students to hear, this is how this phrase should sound. This is what it should sound. Or if I'm teaching the bass line, maybe we're during the mental run, I, Mr. Bush, am singing it, right? I'm singing it with the exact articulation and inflection that I want, right? And then we will slowly add the students in. We tend to add in section leaders first, everybody else maybe on the rim, and then build out from there. But again, this process we're showing them is like, how often is it? Oh, okay, hey, let's play top to A for the first time, and it's just a mess. It's just a dirty, horrible mess. And these poor, that 14-year-old kid on the end who's never even held marching sticks until a month ago, right? They have no clue what it should sound like or feel like or anything.
Whether they should even know what it sounds like.
And they're playing so loud. Their taps are like, by their nipples, right? They're so high and so loud, they can't hear anything that's happening next to them anyway, right? And in this method, maybe instead of playing it poorly 10 times in a row, the end kid only gets to play it 6 times. But those 6 times are so much more valuable because they have such a better idea of what it is they're actually trying to achieve by the time they come in.
Yeah,
right?
It also takes less time.
Yeah.
Even though it might feel like it takes more.
Yeah.
It takes less
requires
time.
more patience.
Yes.
Yeah.
It requires more patience. Ooh, yes. Put that on the list. Number 25.
Yeah, absolutely. So transition is the most difficult thing in music. That leads us to rule number 4: practice your weakness, not your strength. Hug your monster. Now, I think this is fairly universal. I mean, I doubt any of us have ever had any type of extensive education without having a wonderful teacher express this in some manner to us, right? And the hug your monster comes from our dear friend T.R. Fitzgibbon, and one of the greatest educators we ever worked with. But he really liked to reframe it aggressively as whatever this weakness, your perceived weakness you have, right? We as humans, we don't like doing something we're not good at. I love playing paradiddle diddles, so I'm just going to play paradiddle diddles off the right, right? I don't like playing flams because I'm not very good at it. I don't have a coordination, so I'm not going to play any. And he would hit it with this really positive, no, you are going to be the flam king, right? Like you are going to do this, and I can think of multiple middle school students I have done the same thing with, like, oh, I can't play a double stroke roll, or I can't play a whatever, I can't play mallets. And it's like, no, you are going to be the mallet queen, right? And kind of that reframing, for me at a more practical level, a good example of this is I have always found it very silly that in drumline, we are so symmetrical with our basic exercises. I'm going to play 8 strokes with my right hand, 8 strokes with my left hand, 8 bucks with my right hand, 8 bucks with my left hand, 8 doubles with my right hand, 8 doubles with my left hand, right? But you know what sucks? Your left hand. Your left hand sucks, right? And as a judge, I will hear these triplet rolls. And if I listen intensely to the quarter note triplet, I hear a lot of clarity. Because I hear those rights and they are clean. But the roll is dirty. And the roll is dirty simply because of the lack of quality their left hand has. And it just cannot keep up. So we spend much more time than kind of any other drumline I have been a part of or witnessed at least on extended left hand or quote unquote weak hand. And again, this goes back to me on drum set. You know, I can remember as a student, oh man, this beat sounds a lot worse when I try to keep time on the hi-hat with my left foot. I just won't keep time on the hi-hat with my left foot. And then as Mr. Shear said in an earlier podcast, then I listen to a recording and I'm shocked how out of time I am. Yeah. Like, wow, I thought I was way more in time. But then when I took the time to develop and embrace keeping time with my left foot and would go back, not only did I sound better, but my confidence went through the roof. I always knew I was kind of cheating a little before. I'm kind of getting away with something. And then once I really hugged my monster, really dedicated spending time into developing my left foot, oh man, I was less nervous. I was more confident when those fills came or whatever, you know. So I think taking time to focus on your weakness, identify your weakness, strengthen your weakness, make it your strength is a part of the process.
Yeah. I grew up in a time where there was a lot of separation in programs between the battery players and the front ensemble players in terms of the skills that they could handle. At the program that I was in, I would say there were probably more well-rounded percussionists for the time than a majority of the programs around me, but even so, there was that separation of keyboard kids that can't drum and have no desire to learn how to drum and no way to get there. And fortunately, that's not as much the case anymore at many programs, but I know there still is a little bit of that divide. But somewhere along the way when I was teaching front ensembles, I really wanted to make a point of maybe closing that gap a little bit. And so, you know, and I had to have an extended week with the group, maybe just 1 week out of the entire summer, out of the entire year. And, you know, we might have 4 or 5 hours to ourselves during the day that we're not doing ensemble. And 1, maybe 2 of those hours, we would get on pads. And I immediately saw an improvement in the confidence of some of these players on drums, that they would then take to their all-region material, that they would then take to percussion ensembles and didn't have to just play marimba in all the percussion ensembles. And so that was something that I have brought with me with every single camp, every single front ensemble that I'll ever teach, is we'll spend a significant amount of time with drumsticks on pads. Because I want to, in an ideal scenario, the front ensemble kids, like the best of the best are, I mean, not even the best of them, like all of them are competent behind a snare drum in concert band or playing, toms in their percussion ensemble. But some of the best of them can split things just like kids on the bass line.
Oh, yeah.
Can play all the rudiments that any of the snare drum kids can play. Because there's a level of respect that they gain by being able to do that, along with some confidence that comes along the way.
Yeah, I mean, we just had a sophomore that made All-State for the first time, right? And that definitely wasn't because she was scared of the snare drum, even though she was a marimbist, right?
Or fourth marimbist.
She was RAC her first year and
Wow,
fourth marimbist this year.
Marimba 4.
Marimba 4.
Yeah, marimba 4, and she just made state. And not only was she marimba 4, I was trying to get her to audition for the snare line last year. I lost the battle.
He still is trying.
I lost the battle. So there's a lot of validity to that.
You know, guys, as you're talking about both of these rules and as you're describing the ways you implement them at Capel, and as I think about the results I have seen you guys get, whether it's at Capel, whether it's before that at Horn, whether it's in the individual students you've taught, you all clearly have a track record of amazing groups and individuals you've taught, right? As I'm hearing you talk about implementing these rules, the word patience, like you said earlier, keeps coming to mind. And, Ms. Islas, when you were talking about the front ensemble specifically, there's still this little part of my stressed out percussion director brain that's like, wait, whoa. You said we have 4 hours and you're spending 2 of them on pads. Well, that means we might not have the opener learned. Oh my gosh. And it's like, you have to accept that is actually true.
Yeah.
Like if we just look at, if we're short-sighted enough to only look at that 1 week,
right?
Which sometimes we are,
yeah.
right? And go, well, wait a minute, we might not have the opener learned by Friday. It's like, yeah, that's right. That's actually correct. You might not have the opener learned by Friday. You need to give yourself more time. Number one, you probably messed something up that made you have not enough time to learn the opener, actually. Right. But and I have experienced this, I've seen this in my own students, and I've seen you all do this firsthand. Implementing these things that do take more patience up front and might require you to have a little longer timeline on, like I said, learning the opener, it actually really, really increases what the group can achieve at the end, I think. If you learn the music the way you describe, Mr. Bush, if you give those front ensemble students this time to develop these skills that take a while,
right.
then what you're able to accomplish in the end is so much more than you would have been able to if you were just like, yeah, I'm sorry, put the pads away. We got to learn the opener right now because the winds already know it and we have to play it with them on Friday for the recording for the dance team or whatever. It's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
We are not going to be that short-sighted. I am not going to handcuff my students by not spending the time on these things, even though these things might not spit out an instant result right this second. I think that's just so important to be said, that patience is so important there.
I love this rule too, personally. Mr. Bush, I don't know if you know this story, but for my own playing, an example of hugging your monster, there was, when I was in college, Christopher Dean had coached 3 percussionists, myself included, Sean Redman and Mike Hodges, in this concerto that was for, I don't know, maybe 30 different percussion instruments, and it was such a cool, I wish I could remember the name or the composer. It eludes me right now, but it was such a cool concerto that we competed at the UNT percussion or concerto competition with, and won, actually. We had the opportunity to perform it with Eisman Symphony. But the whole thing started with this really epic kind of integrated 3-voice not concertone, kick drum part. That's what it was. And I remember being in the ensemble room and rehearsing it. And we had maybe gotten it up to tempo for the first time. And it wasn't quite locking in. And I couldn't figure out why. I couldn't hear it. And I could tell that Sean and Mike were kind of looking my way. And they wanted to say something, but they didn't say anything. And then finally one of them was like, I think it's because you're dragging. And I was stunned, first of all, because I had clearly prepared my part to the highest level. I was ready to go. How could I be dragging? But they were right. The next rep, I rushed a little bit, and it locked in. And so I went home after that rehearsal with my pad and my sticks and my metronome, and I practiced that part. And I realized for the first time that I had been using the metronome wrong the whole time, always. I had been reacting to it. The metronome sound is happening, and my sound was happening right after that sound. And so I made it a point after that moment that timing would not be a weakness. And now I'm obsessive about timing. Now it's not a weakness for me, but it's also not a weakness for any of my students.
Yes. So on an individual level, I think that's a perfect example, actually, Miss Islas, of like, kind of like I said about Rule 3, how does Rule 4 apply on an individual level? Again, if I'm thinking about like those top level kids that want to make, say, the All-State Band, something that I sometimes would struggle to get them to realize when it comes to their weaknesses or the thing that might prevent them from making the band is like, hey, let's say you get to the end, the all-state audition, and you're going to play every note right, every dynamic right, every rhythm's going to be correct. You got great sticks and mallets and whatever. You're still not going to make it. And it's because of the quality of fill in the blank, some weakness they have. Maybe it's their snare drum buzz rolls. Maybe it's the stroke they use on timpani. But it's like, it's a quality issue. It's a skill that they don't acquire, they don't have right now. Like, hey, it's September and I'm telling you, don't waste your time unless you fix your buzz rolls. Don't spend all the time in the practice room getting that triplet partial perfect, because your buzz rolls will prevent you. So they have to take that weakness and go, okay, my best is not good enough right now. I have to make my best better. Even if I go into the room and by golly, I do my best. It's like, sorry, buddy, it's not going to be good enough.
Yeah.
So we have to identify that weakness. We have to zero in on it, and on an individual level, bring that up to snuff in order to get past the hurdle I need to get past. And I think for an individual, sometimes that can be kind of hard, but it's very important.
Yeah, it goes back to setting the standard and making sure that standard's consistent. And that requires some discipline to address the things that maybe you're going to take more time or a little bit more frustrating, or that you just don't have a lot of experience with when it comes to a student or even with ourselves. But if you really want to go to the next level with whatever you're trying to accomplish, that standard has to be consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The final thing I'd say about it, that again, I think we understand and know because of our experience, but the student probably doesn't because of their experiences. You don't know what you don't know. So you run into a situation, Mr. Bush, I play quads. All I want to play is quads. I want to be a quad drummer. If I put 100% of my time into quads, I'll be the best quad drummer. And my argument to that would be no. Putting the majority of your time into quad drumming will make you the best quad drummer, right? But learning to play jazz taught me how to actually play soft, like what soft was and what was down there. Learning to play metal taught me how to play loud. And, there is an art in playing loud and getting a good sound versus playing loud and getting a bad sound, right? Hitting a cymbal in a certain way to get something out. Xylophone taught me accuracy, and marching bass drum taught me spatial timing and subdividing, and marching snare gave me chops, and orchestral snare taught me how to play a buzz roll, and marimba gave me a bass foundation and harmony and how that works, right? And vibraphone gave me an opportunity to improvise, not on drum set, but in a melodic context. And talking about transitions, you're thinking about where the third on that next chord is, when you're doing jazz improv, so on and so forth, right? Hand drums taught me how to use my wrists and my fingers in a more natural way that I was then able to incorporate with the sticks. And, I would, make this argument here that if, I know that there's some programs, some high school programs where a student just plays the marching snare from middle school all the way through high school. And if your goal at the end of the day is to grid inverted flam drags off the left at 280, that might be how to get there. But if it's a kind of like a maturity of depth of sound in your drumline and just throughout the entirety of your program, spending some of your time getting off your quote unquote primary instrument and developing these skills on other instruments, I think just makes everything stronger.
Mr. Bush, I have a story that illustrates that I think is like I love it so much. It's so beautiful, and it's indicative of how well this group played. So 2008 Phantom Regiment, I'm in the group. I'm in the front ensemble. It's early season. We're rehearsing in Denton, right? This is what Paul's groups do at the beginning of every, they have a week by themselves. So I pull up in my car. I think I've got 12 members of the front ensemble in my car that's like seats 4, right? Because they're all staying in my apartment. We pull up and I park. The quads are in the car next to us. We pulled up next to whoever is driving them. And I look over and they're all just sitting in the car, and they're just staring straight ahead. There's nobody's moving, but the car's on. They're all just staring straight ahead. They don't acknowledge our presence. I'm like, what's going on with the quads? What's happening? And I roll down my window and I can hear that they are they're sitting there still listening to The Process of Invention by Christopher Dean. Which, if you don't know, is this beautiful, amazing, very difficult marimba solo. And it's the quad line, right?
Yes.
It's the regiment quad line.
Yeah.
And they are just and they sat there. The solo was not short.
No,
right?
I think it's 12 minutes long.
They sat there and they listened to the whole thing.
Yep.
And these are the quads. These are not the marimbas. Yeah. And I just remember going whoa, okay, wow. Yep. And I also remember thinking I think we're going to be pretty good. We were it's just indicative of a group that would do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I remember standing in front of Vanguard this summer in McKinney or Mesquite or wherever that was. And the way our friend, Mr. Jonathan Anderson said this, I think last night, and I agree 100%, the way that the upper battery played the music, you felt, whether it is true or not, you felt any of them could get on a concert snare drum right now and would sound outstanding. Like just the approach and the touch and the depth of sound, was huge. And I think another good example of this was, I don't remember the exact year, but it was when Mr. Jeff Osmore was teaching at Colleyville. And they were arguably amongst, one of the greatest drum lines ever in North Texas area. And I think they were doing a New York show for, and this is when they're doing the band show and they're doing a drumline show and they're marching the drumline show, and all that stuff, right? But I remember I come out to this rehearsal and man, they are crushing it. I had not experienced quite a group that big and also that good yet in my career. I'd experienced some smaller, like Lean and Mean, like, oh, we got 4 snares and we can throw down. But this is like 7 kids or whatever. And it was really, 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 really impressive. And as soon as rehearsal is done, we're going to head to Red Robin, get some endless basket of fries and meet up with Yakis and, Niemeyer and Gibson, everything, right? But almost every snare drummer, and this is all, the rehearsal was already after school for 2 or 3 hours, they immediately run to a practice room and begin practicing their marimba solos.
Yes.
That they were like all competing with at PASIC that
right.
year.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And
during
I remember,
the marching season.
Talking with Chad Gibson, talking with Jeff, it's like, this is why that snare line kind of was able to play all that stuff. It's because they were hugging their monster. They weren't scared of that marimba. They knew it was making them better at their primary thing. So thanks so much for hanging with us today, friends. If you have any questions for the podcast, please send them to teamislas@gmail.com. That's teamislas, TeamIslas@gmail.com. Shout out to all the great percussion companies that support Team Islas: Mapex Majestic Percussion, Remo Drumheads, ProMark Sticks and Mallets, Sabian Ensembles, Beetle Percussion, and Lot Riot Apparel. The rules we talked about today come from the Snare Drum Method book, Master Hands. You can pick this book up, as well as any Team Islas music, from our website, teamislas.com, as well as Steve Weiss, Dallas Percussion, or wherever you purchase your percussion music from. And if you can split Meshuggah's Bleed with your left foot while playing 3 camps with your right foot, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and please give us that 5-star review. Remember, friends, step 1 is time, step 2 is sound, and step 3 is subscribing to the Team Islas podcast.